The feeling of getting Maxx C and being forced to pass such a special moment that makes you wanna break your
I'm gonna break my monitor.
In this video, I decided to give you the best chance to deal with this horrific event with pure information. Let's discuss how to beat Maxx C. Now, before we begin, I'd like to let you know that this is a brand new channel that I'm trying to grow, so one like and subscribe can go a long way. Okay, back to it. I'm going to divide the cards by separating them into two groups, turn 1 hand traps and turn 2 staples. Then I'm gonna give you the best decks to counter Maxx C and discuss the conclusion from all of this information. Quick disclaimer, I'm just gonna go over the top staples that you can use and the most popular tools to deal with Maxx C that are used in the majority of decks. I'm not gonna go over every single way to negate it with some small engine in some small archetype. Starting off with the turn 1 staples, we've got Ash Blossom. Because Maxx C adds cards to the hand, Ash is able to negate it, simple as that. You all know how that works. This is the best staple for turn 1. It is also really good against a lot of different decks. Next staple on the list, Psyframe Gear Gamma. Now the two downsides to playing Psyframe Gear Gamma compared to Ash Blossom is that Gamma is nerfed to 2 and Ash is at 3, and also Gamma requires a brick in the face of Driver. Regardless, the staple is really good and it is a way to counter Maxx C. When it comes down to the turn 2 staples, we've got Cold by the Grave being the number 1 best way to deal with Maxx C, and the reason why it's really good is because even if your opponent hard draws a second one, this card negates the second one if he decides to activate it next turn, which is a really good benefit to it. And I've happened to have a lot of times in which they would play basically a second one, which makes me really angry, by the way. And the other turn 2 staple you can use to negate Maxx C is Crossout Designator. Now it is at 1 in Master Duel, which is a big downside. And the second downside is that you need to run Maxx C into your deck, which basically makes you go to the dark side. Now, moving on to the decks that can actually counter Maxx C. First deck we have is Flew on the Reese, and oh boy, I hate this deck to my guts. I don't want to see it, I don't want to hear of it, I just don't want to play with or against this deck. But since it doesn't special summon, it counts as a way to counter Maxx C. Next deck we have is Stun. It is a really toxic deck, but again, it doesn't need to special summon, so it counts as a counter to Maxx C. Now the third deck I'm going to mention is Guru Control, and I do like the deck, but only if it's not played with these toxic floodgates. The way that this deck works is you basically don't need to special summon much, since you only need your normal summon, and even if you want a special summon, it's only like 1 special summon, 2 at most a turn, plus that this deck has a hand trap that allows you to counter anything if you control a Subterror monster, so that is a benefit that the deck has. And the last deck that I'm going to discuss is Sky Strikers. Now Sky Strikers, unlike the rest of the decks, do use special summons, but they just do it in a way that is really hard for Maxx C to counter. So we're gonna look at 2 different scenarios, turn 1 and turn 2 real quick. So turn 1, you have your normal summon, which is either Ray or Rose, and then you only go into the link place. Now if your normal summon is Rose, they could chain Maxx C and potentially get 1 card from you going into Shizuku, but if it's Ray, what you can do is you can normal summon, then if the opponent activates Maxx C, you just chain the effect, or if the opponent doesn't activate Maxx C, you don't activate the quick effect and just go into Shizuku, adding 1 end phase. That's it. The opponent cannot use Maxx C very well. Now turn 2, you still start with Ray or Rose, and then what you're going to do is you're probably gonna go into either Kagari or Hayate, then go into Shizuku, so it makes it for a total of around 3 special summons. And what you can do is you can normal summon Ray and again go into one of the link plays first, maybe like Hayate, then the opponent gets the ability to Maxx C you, and at most they're gonna get like +1 in value because of you going into Kagari and Shizuku, which is still not going to do that much against this deck. And something to keep in mind is most control decks do have a way to beat Maxx C just because they can give the deck less value and be able to survive multiple turns in a row, which makes the value of Maxx C go down a bit. As for some honorable mentions, I'm gonna say firstly Eldritch and also Yumi Control. Now the reason why those decks didn't make it into the initial video is simply because Eldritch special summons a bit, and even though it doesn't actually summon that much, still summoning like 2 trap monsters or like Eldritch and another monster gives a little bit of value, and the deck is really not that good anyways. Like basically if you want to play pure Eldritch, you end up playing a bunch of floodgates, or if you decide to add a Eldritch engine, it doesn't actually become the deck, it's just a small engine into another deck. As for Yumi Control, the deck is fine, but it does special summon as well, and even though it doesn't summon that much, it can still generate some value for the Maxx C, which is not what we want basically. And it's finally time to discuss whether or not these decks are actually good in the tier meta and should you use them. Now, which of these decks are good? None. Flu is the only one that is capable of dealing with the meta somewhat, but since M-Pen got nerfed to 1, the deck will have some problems, and the others are decent at best. Now Sky Strikers is a little bit of a exception because the deck's not bad, it's just not as good because it's basically a control deck, and the current metagame does need something a little more aggressive, a little more hard hitting, maybe some combos and stuff. So Sky Strikers really don't fit very well into the landscape. In conclusion, I want to say that if you're trying to play a top tier deck and also play around Maxx C, this will be nearly impossible to achieve, since the only deck out of all of these that is actually good in the current metagame is Flow on the Race, and it still isn't that good, plus that M-Pen is getting down to 1, so that's a problem as well. But yeah, the top tier decks are just Tier, Sprite, we also have Branded Despia, Sword Sultani, Dragon Link, Exo Sisters, and all of those decks special summon quite a bit and they don't play around Maxx C. So the idea is, instead of trying to play a specific deck to deal with Maxx C, maybe you would prefer to just play some of the staples that I mentioned, or include some small engines that just don't play into Maxx C that much. All in all, it's up to you. I'm only getting the information out there. You need to decide for yourself what you want to play. If you want to go and just play something fun, go for it. I tend to do that a lot actually. For the majority of time, I am playing stuff that is genuinely fun to me and not playing around everything all that much. But if you're trying to be a little more competitive, maybe you should either look what decks can counter certain decks in the metagame, what staples counter Maxx C and other staples that are powerful, and also consider playing one of the top tier decks as well. Bottom line is, run your staples and just draw the out.